Hello, everybody. My name is Timothy Hartley, and I am a teacher in Canada. And I teach at a high school in Canada, a publicly funded high school. And I've taught science and also history um, is my other teachable. And I would like to show you some scientific facts for the existence of God. And I hope that you enjoy this. And I'm not sure what your faith background is, but whatever it is, I would like you to consider the following facts that we can look at, and I would like to challenge you to maybe see it from another perspective. Maybe if you are an atheist and you've seen things as really a collection of random events throughout history, I'd like you to consider that maybe there is something more that you could consider someone who has designed and has brought this amazing universe into existence. So let's look at that today, the evidence for God. So I'm going to start with the first, I'm going to start with the big things to look at, and then I'm going to go smaller and smaller and smaller. So looking at the big picture, even just in our solar system, we know that the Earth and the Moon and the Sun all interact in a very special way on our planet. So I believe there is a God as shown by the heavens. When we look at the heavens, we see that the Earth is exactly the right distance from the Sun at about 160 million kilometers. And sunlight gives usable energy to organisms through photosynthesis. Earth has liquid water that exists on Earth in all phases, so ice, liquid, and gas, so that life on Earth is made possible. The Moon and the Sun appear the same size from Earth through the Earth's perspective, because although the Moon is 1/400th the size of the Sun, it is also 400 times closer than the Sun. It's quite a coincidental thing, or I think it was designed that way so that they would appear the same size from the perspective of the Earth. The Moon gives tides that help remove pollutants and cycle nutrients. If just a fraction of the Moon's tidal energy was conserved, it alone could provide the Earth's electrical needs. The Moon also has phases, 12 per year. The seasons are caused by Earth's tilt on a 23.5-degree axis towards or away from the Sun. And people and other organisms have used the stars for navigation for thousands of years. So this is a way we can see how the Sun, Moon, and the Earth are all the right distance from each other to allow life um, to exist here on a planet. Now let's look at the Earth specifically. Let's look at some of the factors of the Earth that make life extremely um, available to live and to reproduce on the Earth. If we would think about our planet like a spaceship that was created by people, we can see how many things on this planet is perfectly designed for life to exist, as if it had a designer to be made by it. And I would say, even if we take away our faith in God and just look at the evidence, we can say there must have been something more that make our planet almost like a spaceship hurtling through the universe with many different factors that allow life to exist. So I believe there is a God as shown by the Earth. The Earth has a protective magnetic field that shields it from harmful solar and cosmic radiation. So if we didn't have that magnetic field, life would not be possible on the Earth. The thermosphere is the hottest part of the layers of the Earth's atmosphere. It's the part of the atmosphere that absorbs the dangerous UV radiation from the sun to protect organisms on Earth. It's also where the aurora lights are seen over the Earth. Sometimes we live in the northern latitudes, we can see the aurora borealis. It's very, very beautiful, and that occurs in the thermosphere. This layer makes radio waves bounce off the ground to make it transmit farther over the Earth. So thermosphere is very important to our survival. The mesosphere is 37 kilometers thick and protects Earth by burning up to daily 40 tons of meteors in the atmosphere before they ever reach the ground each day. So every day we'd have, if we didn't have the mesosphere, we'd have 40 tons of space objects falling on us. But thank God for the mesosphere that it burns up in that um, in that layer. It also contains a 5 kilometers thick sodium layer that causes a faint glow to the atmosphere. So the higher you go up in the atmosphere, you can see the faint glow that's caused by this sodium layer. The Earth contains rocks and soils that support plant growth, purify water, give a habitat for soil organisms, and recycle nutrients and organic wastes. So the Earth is made up of not only the rocks, but also the rocks have turned into soil that supports the growth of organisms. The soil layer acts as a filter, blocking particulate matter and allowing filtered fresh water to return to the water table. Again, we also have in our atmosphere, we have oxygen at, I believe it's 21% oxygen in the atmosphere. We've got 79% nitrogen gas in the atmosphere. And the oxygen is, of course, enables life to exist on the Earth. And of course, we have a little bit of carbon dioxide that is given out by living things, and also by sometimes outgassing, sometimes burning of fossil fuels creates carbon dioxide, and the plants use that as the fuel or the food that they use to photosynthesize. So all these things, the gases in our atmosphere and all the layers of the atmosphere allow life to exist as well as the soil. So the earth definitely is finely tuned to allow life to exist here. Okay, now let's look at water for a moment. Water is really an incredible substance and really allows life to exist on this planet. Water, in a sense, it kind of looks like a trinity. It's one water molecule um, made up of two hydrogens and one oxygen, almost kind of like God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And it's interesting how water is really the chemical that allows life to exist on our planet. So when we look at the properties of water, we can see some amazing properties. The first one is ice is less dense than water. So as water freezes, the ice, rather than sinking to the bottom of the column of water, it actually rises to the top because it's less dense. And that allows life to exist, allows fish to exist in the bottom of water. It doesn't matter how cold it gets outside, you always have that 4 degrees Celsius, the densest temperature of water that always exists at the bottom of a body of water to allow the fish to exist. It's amazing. Water also has a very high melting and boiling point compared to other similar molecules. It's also called the universal solvent because it is capable of dissolving so many substances. And it also has a high specific heat capacity, allowing places around water to be warmer in winter and cooler in summer. So as you know, it takes a long time to warm up water, but once it's warm, it takes a long time to cool down. So that's a great property of water. Number 5, water has capillary action, allowing water to travel from the roots to the leaves of trees easily. I actually used this capillary action this weekend. I was fixing my dishwasher, and a lot of water went on the ground, and I was sucking it up with my vacuum, and just noticed how it would draw all the water in as the vacuum was sucking up the water. It was literally drawing it all in because the water molecule with the hydrogen bonding, so the two adjacent water molecules will have some attraction. And this attraction is what allows this capillary action in trees when you have water at the base of a tree in the roots absorbed or sucked up by the roots. And as you know, of course, in the tree tissue, you have the xylem tissue, And in the xylem, you have a column of water from the roots literally to the top of the tree, and then it goes out through the leaves. And so, really, you have through transpiration, you see water basically joined to each other, almost like a train. Um, so you have those different water molecules attached to each other, and that capillary action that we see there is what allows the water to go from the roots to the top of the tree and out through the leaves. So water isn't life, but without liquid water, there would be no life. So I really see water as an amazing part of the design of this planet. And we know that there's lots of water outside in the universe, but we have not yet found any life forms outside of Earth. Okay, now let's look at the sea. How does the sea show us potential evidence for God? Let's look at this for a moment. There is a God as shown by the ocean. When we look at the ocean life, our oceans cover more than 70% of the Earth's surface. In fact, most of the Earth's surface around the Earth is actually in complete darkness because, as you know, the ocean is very deep. The average depth of the ocean is uh, quite a few kilometers, and it means that that part of the Earth's surface is actually in darkness when you actually look at the bottom of the ocean at that point. So amazingly, you see the oceans actually cover 70% of the uh, complete surface of the Earth. It's amazing. Majority of life on Earth, about 94%, is aquatic, and over 70% of our planet's oxygen is produced by the ocean. So through the photosynthetic algae, we get a lot of our oxygen supply for the planet. So 70% comes from the oceans through the algae. And it makes for 97% of the Earth's water supply. So the amount of water that's on the Earth, 97% of it is in the oceans. And 3 billion people rely on fish as a main source of protein. So it's directly responsible for the diet of 3 billion people on Earth. Unfortunately, by 2050, due to humans, the plastic in the ocean will outweigh the fish. So sadly, we have not taken good care of our oceans as humans. Now let's look at the fourth element that is potential evidence for God. It's the springs of water. When we think of the springs of water, I'm talking about the water table and groundwater, which exists throughout our Earth. So here's some facts about the water table. The water table is formed when rainwater and water from other water bodies on the surface of the Earth seeps down into the soil and is stored as groundwater. This passing down of water through the soil is known as infiltration. However, of all the usable freshwater in the world, approximately 97% of it is groundwater. Groundwater may be near the Earth's surface or as deep as 30,000 feet. So really, it doesn't matter where you go on Earth. I mean, there are some exceptions, but usually when you go and you dig down deep enough, you'll get to the water table. The depth of the water table can change. It can rise or fall depending on the time of the year. So during the late winter and spring, when accumulated snow starts to melt and the spring rainfall is plentiful, water on the surface infiltrates into the ground and the water table rises. The same in the summer, late in the summer, the water table goes down. But the amazing thing about that is allowed people to live in very inhospitable places because they have access to a well where they can get water that's drinkable and they can survive there. So for thousands of years, people have dug wells and have found water for themselves. There's no other organism that does that can dig a well except humans, and that has allowed for humans to become very successful in acquiring water throughout the earth. Now, another thing that shows an existence of God is the symbiotic relationships in nature. When we see different organisms in nature, they interact, they help each other, almost like they know that they're on the same team, they work together. And that to me shows the nature of a good God that creates organisms that actually cooperate and work together to become successful. Okay, some examples are the bee, and the bee receives the pollen on its legs. As it goes, burrows into the flower to get the nectar. So the bee gets a drink of nectar, and the plant gets the bee to pollinate other plants. Or you think of an oxpecker and a rhinoceros. You see an oxpecker cleaning off the insects on the skin of the rhinoceros. The oxpecker gets a meal, and the rhinoceros gets a body that's free of the parasites and the insects that are a great annoyance to the rhinoceros. Another example is the goby fish and the bulldozer shrimp. The goby fish is a lookout for the shrimp, and the shrimp in turn makes a beautiful home for the goby to live in. So you see a partnership between the goby fish and the bulldozer shrimp. Another example is the cute sloth, and on the sloth you've got algae growing, so it's a plant and an animal together. Algae has a home to photosynthesize on the fur of the sloth, and the sloth in turn gets great camouflage from other predators. Another example is this tarantula, the big, huge spider, with a pet frog. And you may think, well, how in the world is this working? Well, it turns out that the frog protects the eggs of the tarantula as the eggs are growing by eating some of the insects that would attack the eggs. And in turn, the tarantula gives the frog complete protection from any predator that might attack it. So it's amazing how they work together. So that's one of the most unusual relationships I've seen. And we see also with the clownfish and anemone. The clownfish emits a sound which deters other fish from preying on the anemone, and in turn, the clownfish gets a home in the anemone to live. Um, the last one we see here is mycorrhizae, and that's a certain type of fungus that lives in the ground. And one of the beautiful things about the fungus is that it can absorb water and nutrients much more efficiently than the roots of trees. So what happens is that the roots of the trees and the mycorrhizae are in a relationship with each other, where the the tree will give the mycorrhiza the nutrients that it receives through photosynthesis, because of course fungus can't, definitely that mycorrhiza cannot photosynthesize, and in turn the fungus gives the tree the nutrients that it needs to live, gives it like the extra water and extra nutrients. So you see here, through these organisms relating to each other, you can see this beautiful harmonious relationship between some creatures. Now, I had a very good question earlier on today about the role of, let's say you have some parasites that live in the bodies of certain organisms. How is that symbiosis? And I think one of the things that I see as a kind of from my perspective is that although our world shows evidence for God, there's also some negative things in our world. There's disease, there is predation, there is um, you have even parasitism that occurs in our world, and I would say that there is a fallen part of nature where you have things as it should not be. And I was one of the analogies would be like, say, a Ferrari. You have the maker of a Ferrari makes it beautiful, this beautiful red Ferrari that someone's driving down the road and it looks gorgeous, but then the Ferrari crashes on the freeway. And you see this crumpled up Ferrari and you think, what kind of an idiot creator would of a Ferrari would make some kind of Ferrari like this? And it'd be kind of absurd to say, why would the maker create a broken Ferrari? And people would say, that's not how it was intended to be made. It was made to be beautiful, to be a wonderful working Ferrari, but it got into an accident. And I think the same thing with our world. It wasn't designed to be like it is sometimes. And what we're seeing is the results of the fall or a crash that occurred and that permanently altered the creation to be, in some ways, what it wasn't supposed to be in the beginning. So here are some other examples of mutualism in nature, and we looked at some of them in the previous slide, and there is a little bit more there as well. One interesting thing is Jesus, in his teaching, he mentioned two organisms in his teaching. The first one was the lilies. Jesus said, "Consider the lilies, how they grow. They don't toil nor spin. But I tell you, not even Solomon in all his glory was not clothed like one of these." So Jesus asked us to consider nature. He also asked us to look to the ravens. Look at the ravens. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for God feeds them. And you are far more valuable to him than any birds. Okay, so we see when we look at those two organisms, so let's first look at the ravens. How are the ravens fed by God? Well, the answer would be through the food web. You see, the raven is provided with food through the food web. And in fact, we are all provided with food through the food web. If either you are a vegetarian, you just eat directly plant material, or you are like me, you like to have a nice barbecue. We all we all benefit from the food web. We go down to a grocery store and we pick up packaged meat, and someone had to kill that animal to provide for us, and so we are provided through the food web as well. And then, of course, looking at the plants, how are lilies clothed by God, as Jesus said? Well, lilies and all plants, all green plants, I should say, are provided, they're clothed by God by photosynthesis. So you see this process of light and the amazing processes that happen inside the chloroplast in a often in the leaves. Of course, it happens in other parts of the plant as well. I actually took a course on photosynthesis. That was the whole course. It was half a credit, and it's fascinating to see the amazing process of photosynthesis that occurs so effortlessly in plants to provide, um, to transmit the light energy from the sun into chemical energy that can be used for food. So I see how God clothes the lilies and all the plants that we have through this amazing process of photosynthesis. And what's really interesting in the carbon cycle, the photosynthesis, takes the carbon dioxide from the air and in the plant cells and converts it into glucose and, of course, other different types of macromolecules which are eaten by organisms, and then we in turn, and organisms also, and also plants, respire, releasing carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. So you have this very cyclical um, process, and it's very conservative. It allows for um, you know one product of one reaction to be used as the starting reactants of the other reaction. So it's amazing how everything is really conserved. And I think of it almost like I have a Lego bin downstairs in my children use. And they create Lego, they put it together, and that's kind of almost like the bodies of organisms. And when they're done with it, break it apart, put it back into the bin, and now it's, in a sense, it's back in the soil as well, and waiting to use those um, elements to make a new creation, a new creature. And that's kind of what we see in the soil as well, and on the earth. We see nutrients recycled, and it's amazing. Now we're going to we've looked smaller and smaller and smaller, from looking at the heavens, looking at the earth, looking at water, looking at the ocean, looking at the water table, looking at organisms. And now we're going to look very, very small at the DNA molecule, because I think biology was my subject of study in university, and that's really where I find the greatest inspiration for believing in God, is looking at these at microbiology in particular. Okay, did you know DNA is made up of only 4 letters called nucleotides, and 3 of them in a row are called a codon. The codons code for amino acids and start stop. So I'll explain that in a little bit. DNA is packaged into chromosomes like books. The entire genome is like a set of encyclopedias for each and every organism that has ever lived on Earth. Literally trillions of creatures have been made with their own set of encyclopedia-like DNA called a genome. This, okay, a model that I've used of DNA. So I have a model about this size of just a couple of turns of DNA. And if that was a human genome, and if that was the size of it, it would actually go around the Earth 1.64 times. That's how many nucleotides we have. We have 3 billion nucleotides. Actually, probably 3.2 billion nucleotides in the human genome. That is amazing. That's a lot of information inside the DNA. So I think DNA is really good evidence for the existence of God. And I'm going to compare an analogy of human written language, so say books, and compare that books with what we see in DNA, because I think there's a great correlation to that. So DNA is a genetic code that gives instruction for the appearance of every living organism. It is the blueprint for every living thing that has ever existed on Earth. But does it have an author, or is it randomly formed? Those are 2 options we have. I can either say it's formed by an intelligent designer, or it's by random chance. Bill Gates said in the book The Road Ahead, DNA is like a computer program, but far, far more advanced than any software ever created. At first glance, DNA just looks like a mass of chemicals inside a cell. But when you actually look at it very closely, very carefully, and you understand how DNA is replicated, and how incredibly complex it is, you have to look at it and just really stand in awe of this macromolecule that we all have in our bodies, that really is the blueprint for every one of our traits. Well, most of our traits. There's the nature and nurture, right? But a lot of it comes from the genes. A lot of it is genetic. So let's, using this analogy of a book versus chromosomes, let's look at this. So humans, we will read a book. That's a macroscopic scale, so large scale. But God scale, God can work in very, very fine details. Let's say a cell on a cellular level, and very, very, I think, infinitesimally small is the ways that God can act. So we see here in the human mind versus the mind of God. We can see the mind of God, I believe, is behind what we see in DNA. But let's compare um, written text with DNA for a moment. So with written text, you have the strokes of the pen. So let's say to do the letter A, we have to do 1, 2, and 3 strokes to make that letter A. In the same way, with DNA nucleotides, there are 4 different types. The G is for guanine, T is thymine, A is adenine, and C is cytosine. And basically, you have a triplet. So every 3 nucleotides is like a letter of the alphabet. So every triplet of DNA nucleotides codes for 1 of the 20 amino acids. So there are 20 amino acids that exist, and amino acids are like the building blocks of the cell. So without amino acids and proteins, life would not be possible. There are other macromolecules as well to consider, but specifically the genetic code does code for amino acids and polypeptides, all that stuff. So this is the master code right here. It's been discovered over I don't know, it's been like 70 years since DNA has been, the structure of DNA has been discovered. And so scientists have worked out the codes needed for each of these different amino acids. And it turns out there are 20 amino acids that life uses. And you can see here the AUG here stands for methionine. And basically the methionine means to start. Means to start the amino acid chain. And then you can see at the top right hand corner of that chart there, UAA, UAG, and UGA all mean stop. So it means that the the uh, the, the transcript, so the mRNA, is read by the ribosome, and when you have in the mRNA an AUG, it says to start it, and when you get the UAA, UAG, and UGA, is basically when the polypeptide is complete. At that code, it stops, transcription stops, and then now that newly formed amino acid chain can now be folded into a protein or become an enzyme, whatever it needs to do. So the big picture is you've got 20 amino acids necessary for life, but you also have to have a start and a stop. So 20 plus 2 is 22. It's interesting, coincidentally, you also have 22 letters in the Hebrew language. So interesting, is there a correlation? Some people believe there is a correlation between the Hebrew letters, the Hebrew alphabet, and the different amino acids. It's quite interesting. I just don't have much knowledge of this, but it is very fascinating and something that would be interesting to look into a little bit more. And would be quite interesting since I believe the God of creation is also the God of the Bible. So it's a little bit interesting to think about the possibility of that. So as I said before, amino acids are the building blocks of life. Without amino acids, you can't have life. And amino acids form the basis of enzymes and proteins that are necessary in every cell of our body. So when we think of a book being read by your eyes, let's say the word is black cat, the analogous feature that's similar to eyes on a microscopic level would be RNA polymerase. So RNA polymerase would look at DNA and would start synthesizing a little transcript from it that would become an mRNA transcript. And so in a sense, RNA polymerase reads the DNA, just like eyes would read the text on the page. Then the brain would interpret the words on the page and think, okay, that's a black cat. So now there's a mental image formed from the words. In the same way, DNA is interpreted by ribosomes. So you have the DNA, it's made into an mRNA transcript. Ribosomes bind to the mRNA transcript, create your long amino acid chain because it's interpreted by the ribosomes. In other words, the ribosomes take it from the mRNA language, and interpret it into an amino acid language if you want, or the amino acid idea that's represented by the mRNA. In the same way as when you read a book, you take the text and you get the idea from it. So very similar and very analogous in that way. Then you make paragraphs with text. So I'm going to read this text here. The black cat ran down the street, caught a mouse, and then returned home carrying its treasure. So it's a sentence, of course, and if you keep on going into paragraphs, what it's analogous to is making a long amino acid chain and making a polypeptide from that. Next, continue on with the writing, and you get a chapters in a book. It would be analogous to a functional polypeptide. Then you get bigger chapters, you get book subsections, and that would be similar to a gene. A gene is a segment of DNA that codes for a particular trait. And getting larger scale, it's like having a single book and an encyclopedia. Set of encyclopedias is like what a chromosome is. Chromosome is one of a package of DNA that is a part of the whole genome of a creature, but it's only one chromosome of, many organisms have multiple chromosomes. So it's like a single book and encyclopedia. Then, when you get the whole set of encyclopedias, it's analogous to a complete genome. So this here, you have the human genome. Humans have 46 chromosomes. So we have 23 from mom, 23 from dad, and every creature that exists on planet Earth have a genome. And it's amazing because every creature has their own set of encyclopedias. But it's even way more complicated than an encyclopedia would be. So you think of an encyclopedia like Encyclopedia Britannica, or this is Encyclopedia Judaica. The encyclopedia that we have in our genomes of every creature on Earth is far more complicated than a encyclopedia made by humans. So you have to realize that we're dealing with incredible complexity. It's not easily explained away. I think many people, such as Richard Dawkins, has argued that there's a blind watchmaker, and yes, it is a watch, and he does say yes, it is incredibly complex, but blind processes have made this, like random processes, and I would challenge that. I would say to Richard Dawkins that you do need to consider the incredible complexity that is not easily argued away. You cannot just simply trivialize this argument of looking at the complexity. It is something that needs real explanation. If you're going to explain it in purely coincidental terms, I really don't think you have enough really leg to stand on in that way. You have to see that it is, even if you're an evolutionary biologist like Richard Dawkins, you have to appreciate the incredible complexity of the cell and of these microbiological wonders that are showing. I'm going to show you in a few seconds. I'm going to show you what goes on in the cell. Okay, let's go on here. Now we look at the chromosome count of selected animals that we have. Um, these are mammals, and I do have a bird that's here, but you can see the different number of chromosomes. So look at dog is 78 chromosomes. Of course, wolf is same, the dog family. Hen, interestingly, 78 chromosomes. Camel, 74. Reindeer, 70. Wild horse, 66. Domestic horse, 64. donkey 62, domestic cattle 60, bison and goat 60, sheep 54, gorilla 48, man 46, rabbit 44. So you notice all these numbers they're even numbers, and of course it's due to the fact that meiosis, when you have the production of gametes, like the sperm and the egg cells, they are haploid, and they are an odd number of chromosomes. And when they come together to make your zygote and eventually the next progeny, you're going to have again a diploid number. So that's why you have all even numbers, and it's amazing. This principle is used um, in so many different organisms that have sexual reproduction. So we see that DNA, on one hand, you've got books that can be photocopied, and it's great. I mean, we use photocopiers to make copies of our books, but DNA can self-replicate with an error factor of 1 in 10 billion. So think of this. Our genome has 3 billion nucleotides in it. So we could have our complete genome replicated not once, not twice, but not 3 times before we get even one mistake. And that to me is amazing, to think of the incredible way that our bodies and cells of our bodies can actually duplicate our strands of DNA perfectly. And so it's unbelievable. The complexity and also the accuracy at which nature self-replicates. Now let's look at this little video showing what happens in every cell of our body when DNA is being transcribed. So you have transcription taking place here. The DNA is being, a copy is made, an mRNA copy is being made. But look how quickly it's made. And in the second part of the video, we're going to show how chromosomes are organized from the DNA strand, which is literally 1.8 meters long in every cell of our body, into those little tiny packages called chromosomes. So let's watch this together.
The central dogma of molecular biology: DNA makes RNA, makes protein. Here the process begins. Transcription factors assemble at a specific promoter region along the DNA. The length of DNA following the promoter is a gene, and it contains the recipe for a protein. A mediator protein complex arrives carrying the enzyme RNA polymerase. It maneuvers the RNA polymerase into place, inserting it with the help of other factors between the strands of the DNA double helix. The assembled collection of all these factors is referred to as the transcription initiation complex, and now it is ready to be activated. The initiation complex requires contact with activator proteins, which bind to specific sequences of DNA known as enhancer regions. These regions may be thousands of base pairs distant from the start of the gene. Contact between the activator proteins and the initiation complex releases the copying mechanism. The RNA polymerase unzips the small portion of the DNA helix, exposing the bases on each strand. Only one of the strands is copied. It acts as a template for the synthesis of an RNA molecule, which is assembled one subunit at a time by matching the DNA letter code on the template strand. The subunits can be seen here entering the enzyme through its intake hole, and they are joined together to form the long messenger RNA chain snaking out of the top.
All right, we can see the incredible complexity of what's taking place on such a minute level. It's just unbelievable. All right. So when we look at facts, so there are no, we can't say there's evidence for really anything. There's facts is out there, and we have to use our worldview to look at the facts and interpret the facts in light of our worldview, and we all do that. My worldview is, I do believe in God. So when I look at these facts, all the factors that we've been looking at, to me, I say there must be a God who's made DNA, the self-replicating system that codes for all the traits of all the organisms who have ever lived on Earth. So scientists estimate that there are currently 8.7 million different species of organisms, each with their own unique genome. So think of it like they all have their own next set of encyclopedias. And since language cannot exist without a mind to make language that codes for meaning, then there must be a language maker. There must be a language maker that has made the DNA. Therefore, there must be a God. So I just want you to think for a moment. Imagine for a moment that you are visiting Will and Jada Smith's mansion in Calabasas, California. And let's just say Will and Jada, personally, they built the whole mansion with their own hands. They planned it, designed it, built it, just the two of them. Spent years. And now you have an opportunity to go and spend a week for free at their mansion. So let's just imagine for a moment. So you eat the finest chef prepared meals from their pantry. You swim in the huge swimming pool, play tennis, and soak in their jacuzzi. You watch a great movie in the private theater, and at the end of the day, fall asleep in the guest room's large king size bed and have a beautiful sleep. At the end of the week, while you're eating breakfast, you see a thank you card, and you're asked by, let's say, the chef there to write a note for Will and Jada Smith. So you've got that thank you card in your hand, and you're like, I don't know. However, you tell people that you do not believe Will and Jada Smith exist, and you refuse to sign the thank you card. Now, let's say someone did that. What would you think of them? What would you think of someone who refused to sign the thank you card that stayed for a week? If you're like me, you'd probably say, well, that sounds pretty ungrateful. You stayed for a whole week at someone's house who enjoyed all that they provided, but you never stopped to actually thank the owners of the home, the builders of the home. And I think this is also analogous to us in our society. We have sometimes in our quest for science, we've looked at so many of the minute details of science, and we can explain the weather, we can explain what's going on in biological systems, we can explain lots of things. But I think the big picture that we've missed with science is really seeing the fact that we are created beings. And in fact, we are in a created world and a created solar system and a created universe that is perfectly tuned for life, of course, on our planet only that we know of. And so we can either say, well, we just came here by chance, but I think I just don't have enough faith to believe that. I have to say, it's because if we believe we came by chance, then everything we see around us is by chance. Everything is an accident. Humans are accidents. All the creatures of the phylogenetic tree basically arose by accidents. And I just don't have that much faith for that. I find it much better to say there is a creator. And looking at the complexity out there, there's a mind that's far beyond mine that has created what we see around us. And I think to me, that is a better explanation. Um, you know, sometimes we may think, well, where is God? And I think of it like a fish in the ocean. A fish may say, where's water? I don't see water around me. And someone could say, little fishy, you're swimming in water. It surrounds you. It fills your tissue. You breathe the oxygen that's in the water. And there's a verse in the Bible that says that it says in him we live and move and have our being. We're kind of like that fish saying, where's the water? I think that's how people have been. We're like, well, where's God? In fact, God is around us. God has given us this incredible world that we live in, and everything points to the fact that there is a loving Creator who has made us. So I would like to just end this talk and say thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you will consider the existence of God and have a great day. Thank you.